Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Hi, Bijane.
Hey, Dr. Sheikah Houston, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm in education, so we're counting down. It's
That's
almost Thanksgiving break.
that's right. I think we're all counting down, whether we're in education or not at that point.
And this is the first year that we are actually getting a week off from school. So we are
Nice
very excited about that.
and much deserving. Let me tell you, I'm a little jelly over here. I'm a little jealous.
But my daughters are definitely excited. So thank you all for joining us. We are connecting educators and parents to great resources. I am Dr. Sheikah Houston with Create and Educate, and our grant guru, Miss Bijane. I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
Hey, everybody. I'm Bijane Kareem. I'm an equity advocate, educator, author, and founder of BK International Education Consultancy, where our social impact mission is to increase student access to innovative education. And we help support them through grant writing and STEAM education, coaching, training, self paced courses, toolkits, you name it. And particularly our award winning 12 Quick Steps to Writing Winning Classroom Grant Starter Guide that's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. But what I'm spectacularly and most excited about tonight is always being the plug and the hookup for other educators and families. And so we have two special guests tonight. We have speakers and authors who are amazing, doing phenomenal work for communities. And so I can't wait for them to be able to share with us their journey to becoming a speaker and an author, as well as to give some tips for those out there who may be aspiring to be a speaker and author. Right? When we know better, we do better. When we learn more, it reduces our learning curve, so we can give each other a step up. So I'm excited about tonight and being able to showcase these features guests, these featured speakers, but also just share how these resources are impactful for school communities as well. Dr. Houston.
Definitely, Bijane. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lamont Rashford from Higher Definition Radio is joining us. So we appreciate everyone that's tuning in. And if you are tuning in, let us know that you are here. Just say hello and share the feed so that people can get the information. So at Create and Educate, my co-founder Tammy Taylor and I, we really we help educators in schools, first of all, with educational consulting, but we also saw that there was a need to get more culturally relevant, not only books in for literature and for learning purposes, but also speakers. So Bijane and I have joined forces to try to bring educators and parents these great resources that we have found by the people that we know through our network. And we'll also put in a link where people can sign up to be a part of our platform. So I'm going to bring up our first guest,
Yay!
Mr. Welvin Simpkins. How are you, Mr. Simpkins?
I'm good. I'm good. How you ladies doing tonight?
Doing well.
Excellent,
Good.
excellent. Glad to have you here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you guys for having me. Me and Dr. Houston been trying to connect for quite some time, so I'm looking
Look
forward
at
to the
this.
opportunity. Yeah.
We got to connect virtually these days, right?
Yes, Mr. Simpkins is very busy. He has a lot going on, but I'm glad he was able to join us because speaking is something that we definitely need in schools to help our students get motivated, but we also want to keep our educators motivated.
Exactly.
So I'm going to introduce Mr. Simpkins. Welvin Simpkins is a personal growth coach, founder, and CEO of Live to Grow, a style of visionary coaching that will encourage and empower all involved by giving them clear direction and strategies for achieving success. Simpkins is an innovative leader with 14 years developing the youth of America as a mastered level of education professional school counselor with Rock Hill Schools and 12 years of coaching high school football at Independence, North Carolina, and South Point in South Carolina. After 12 years of coaching and being a part of 8 state championships, Simpkins constantly explores various opportunities to speak life into young adults. Over the course of his career, he has developed a passion to help develop a student athletes on and off the football field. His goal now is to help young adults determine their purpose in this world of uncertainty while retooling the mindset for personal growth to maximize all phases of life. Simpkins is a native of Edgefield, South Carolina, married to former Keisha Bibbs, and they have two sons, Braylon and Braxton. He is the youngest son to the late Deacon Willie and Reverend Carmilla Simpkins, and a graduate of Strom Thurmond High School. He was also an initiate into the Kappa Lambda chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. Let me get that right. And a 2001 graduate of Clemson University with a bachelor's degree in marketing, and a 2014 graduate of Liberty University with a master's degree of education in school counseling. Simpkins is currently working on his state licensure to become a licensed professional counselor. And your quote is one that I also use as one of my favorite quotes. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men, by Frederick Douglass.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yes.
So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again for having me.
And tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a speaker. What was the thing that inspired you to want to speak life into young adults and want to be on a platform to send a message to young people?
Well, my first opportunity to actually speak to young men came when I was at South Point. It was my last year coaching there in 2017. Shout out to Coach Herron. He gave me an opportunity to be the life skill coach. And that was something that he was trying new that hadn't been done before. We thought it was a unique idea, but at the same time, we was unsure if it would work because the day we had the life skills discussion, it was on a Wednesday, and usually we do a lot of work on the field on Wednesday. So to take that day off the field and utilize it in the locker room and things of that nature, we was just unclear of whether or not it would have an impact. But it ended up having a huge impact. The guys stayed healthy throughout the whole year. That year, we actually finished 15-0. We won our fourth straight state championship. But in the process of doing that, we were also able to build young men off the field. And we were able to cover a lot of different topics that were meaningful for them, but also it helped them grow and develop to where they were able to see some of the things at that age that we didn't think they could have gotten a chance to see had we not had those discussions. So it all started really 2017, but I've always had a knack to just, connect with kids. Even before I started coaching with my fraternity, we have Kappa League where we were able to connect with young men. And I actually started mentoring, was actually in 2006. Me and a couple of my fraternity brothers, Roger and Carlos, we were mentoring kids at Castle Heights Middle School. So it kind of started there, but it actually caught fire when I was at South Point, and I served as a life skill coach there.
Well, that is awesome. And, in recent news, there has been so many negative things happening with young people, and it just seems to be like a lack of empathy.
Yep.
And I'm not really sure if that is something that is coming from social media and the culture that has created in people to be less interactive and less empathetic. But what types of messages are you able to deliver to schools and to children for people who are interested in bringing you in, or youth groups?
Well, the biggest thing to speak on what you just mentioned is, I think there is a lack of empathy, but I think it goes back to, us just not being able to communicate. Let's be honest, most communication takes place, with a cell phone. People would rather text than pick up the phone and call. And I think, because that has been done so much for this generation, they haven't developed the ability to be able to communicate. So I think it's important for them to be able to understand how to handle those issues that may come about without it resulting to violence, but because there's no ability to communicate, that's the first thing that comes to mind, you know, to get physical. So, you know, one of the things that I try to make sure, you know, when I speak to young men is understanding how to conduct themselves in a manner in which you can relate what you want to say, but you can do it in a respectable way. You know, I can communicate how I'm feeling and why I feel this way based on what happened without becoming physical. So to answer your next question, as far as, you know, some of the topics, you know, I mainly try to build the men to see what they could be. You know, we talk about various topics. I talk about vision boards, social pressures, what it means to interact with you know, professionals, money management, you know, what it means to be a life champion, maximizing your life. So a lot of things to get the guys to start to think, because one of the things I like to tell guys, you know, you should think fast but talk slow. You know, process what's going on, but be able to communicate in an effective way that the person who you're speaking to can comprehend what you're trying to say and be able to receive it.
I love that. I love that. And dovetailing off of that, just in terms of the messaging that you share with schools, I'm curious, what would be maybe one of the most valuable tips that you would offer to maybe budding or aspiring speakers such as yourself?
Well, here's the thing. I truly believe, and I may be, you know, one of few that believe this, everyone on this earth has a purpose. Every single one of us has a purpose. Now it's up to us to determine what that purpose is and to make sure that we're doing all we can to maximize those things. But once you find something that you fell in love with, that, you know, it eats at you, you know, you go to sleep thinking about it, you wake up, you get up over in the middle of the night thinking about ideas that you have to write down, that's when you know you found your passion. And when you find your passion, do whatever you can to make sure you don't lose that desire, to make sure you maximizing what God has given you. Because again, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm so much further along than what I was years ago, because I refuse to allow this opportunity for me to connect with people to go unnoticed. Again, I've been given a passion that has been developed over the years, but I want to make sure that I'm doing all I can to make sure that every message that I have to give young people is getting out. So once you find that niche, once you find what makes you, you know, feel valuable to other people, then you got to make sure you're honing in on that and not losing focus. When things around you start to unravel, so to speak, you know, things may not working out as the way you thought they would work out, but you got to keep going. You got to keep going.
I think that's great advice. And thank you, Lamont. And we appreciate Higher Definition Radio as well. That platform is one that elevates African-American voices in the community and businesses as well. So it's one of our partner platforms. It's actually how I found out, I think, about Mr. Simpkins along with Mr. C.T. Kirk.
Oh yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Shout out to Mr. Lamont. He gave me a feature on this show. So I appreciate him and all the work that he's doing over there with High Definition as well.
And we can actually put that link in the comments. So if people would like to have a preview of, you know, what your message may be about in your background, that's a good way for them to learn that. And before we bring up our next guest, are your speaking engagements in person only, or are they also virtual, or do you do a combination of both?
I do a combination of both. Right now, I'm working on a couple of deals towards this first of next year, but mainly because of, you know, everything is starting to get back to some level of normalcy. I'm starting to push out to in-person speaking engagement. So I have done both, but right now, like I said, we are making a huge push to get back in front of the folks, because I think that makes it more meaningful when you can actually, you know, really be in front of someone and connect with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I thank you for what you do. And we know that you're busy. So if you have time to hang out with us while we talk to our next guest, that'll be great. But if not, we understand. And I'm definitely going to be in touch with you about speaking with our young men in our district, because the teachers have expressed a need to motivate them, especially around this time. This is when we kind of start losing our fire a little bit. So I'll be in contact with you about that. But
And,
Sounds good.
and Mr. Simpkins should also consider grants as well to help support get in front and get back in person and also cover those travel costs, because you hit on a variety of areas that are much needed. You mentioned about communication. We know there are grants out there for college and career readiness, which you help to address and support. Gender specific funding to help your program mentorship programs with young men, right? And even you're talking about self-regulation. So thinking about social emotional learning are popular grant funding right now that you could tap into to help you get in front of more and help support children, families, school communities with your message. So consider something to think about.
Well, the word on the street is you're a grant writing guru, so I might need to talk to you offline.
Okay, let's talk. Let's talk.
There's nothing better than free 99. I can
Okay.
tell you.
Thank you again, ladies, for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Thank you. All right, Bijane, I'm going to bring up our next guest and I'm going to let you do introductions.
Absolutely. So our next guest, hey, Dr. Fanike Kiara Olugbala Young.
Welcome.
I know, mouthful.
Yes. So I have to give the whole spiel and then she can jump in and talk about herself. But
okay.
One, I have to say, Dr. Olugbala Young and I go way back.
Way back.
Way back to when we were in college. And so it is such an honor to be able to have her on this platform to share the amazing things that I've been able to see her just do throughout her career. And so Dr. Fanike Kiara Olugbala Young, she's an integrative wellness program designer. She's also a business profit growth strategist, and she uses her experience as a doctor of behavioral health, a program consulting, licensed trauma therapist, and master Reiki practitioner to design and implement wellness systems for corporations, for businesses, organizations, and we know schools fit into all those things. Dr. Fanike, she has over 20 years of clinical training and training design experience that allows her to assist organizations and companies with employee and customer retention. And we also know that there's a teacher shortage out there, so we definitely could use her support in school communities, right? And she helps to improve the overall wellness culture and strengthening really the bottom line of incorporating value and care for teams, for people that make up the organization. So I'm excited to have her on because she's a keynote speaker and an author of her latest book called What the F is Your Problem? Becoming an Active Worker in Healing Your Trauma. And her ultimate goal is to normalize organizations taking care and caring for their people. And I think this is definitely a timely message, just given the climate of society, but even just coming up on the holidays, you know, we have to be mindful of others. So I'm so glad that you're on the show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get in. So you are a speaker. I mean, you do all the things, right? You travel all around. You bless people with your talents. Talk to us a little bit about how particularly you got into, or what inspired you to write a book, because you have a nice resume there. So what particularly inspired you to write a book, though?
So the book came about. The book was it. I worked on it for years. Let's just say that. And the book started off as just something very therapeutic for myself. As a person who has a lot of childhood trauma, when I hit my 20s, I realized exactly how much the trauma was affecting me as an adult. And so, we're speaking to educators, right? So, children with trauma grow up to be adults with trauma, right? And so I found that, that was the case for me, and it hadn't been dealt with. I was born into a, I'll say typical Black family where, the old school mother. And, you're okay. Well, you look okay. You're eating, you're running around, you're doing all the things. So you're fine. So, whatever you've experienced, it must not be that bad. So it's really no need for us to do anything or address it. Right. So I think for a lot of us, right, and that's who we're talking to, a lot of us in our families, that's that's the way things are typically dealt with, you know, where you look
Mhm.
like you're fine. Oh, you're fine. You're
Mhm.
okay. It's all right. You can
You'll get
handle it.
over it. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. You can handle it. And you know, that I'm going to another topic, but that kind of plays into why, you know, society overlooks a lot of our stuff as well, because it starts with us. We overlook our own stuff as well, right?
Mhm.
So the book came from that, and it started off as it being like a therapeutic thing for me. But what it really turned into was, wow, like we really have some trauma that
Mhm.
we need to like start figuring out, but also getting the skills to start to deal with it. And just knowing that as a therapist, a lot of people don't, you know, want to go to therapy, that stigma still exists. So I
Mhm.
felt like the book would be a good, you know, avenue to just open up people's minds to say, okay, well, what can I start doing myself? Because I do ultimately believe that we all have the power to heal ourselves. We just need someone to point us in the right direction and help us, you know, to get there.
I'm glad you stated that. Being in the schools, a lot of times we also see that trauma, because it may be something that has happened generationally, it's people's norms. So if they feel like, well, you know, certain things may have happened to me and I'm okay. So if that happened to my child and I got through it and I'm okay, they'll be okay
Yeah.
too. They'll end up being okay. Or they have normalized it as a
Yeah.
norm.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you brought that up about the families, because sometimes we see it cycle through and
Definitely.
people don't understand what normal is.
Yeah.
Shout out to Miss Dot, who's on with us, and you have gotten an
How
invitation
does that?
from Higher Definition Radio. They do a lot of shows where they're talking about trauma, or
Okay.
with someone with your background would be helpful. So I'll put you in contact with
Okay.
Mr. Ratchford to be on Higher Definition Radio.
Okay.
And
Hi,
I'll,
Mr.
and I'll
Ratchet.
have to forewarn you about him. I'll tell you offline about Mr. Ratchford, his
Okay.
traditionalism that he
Okay.
has going on with women. That's
Okay.
a
Oh,
joke we
I
always
like
have.
those. Yeah.
Oh, I got somebody for you now, Mr. Ratchford.
I like those.
But for educators who would like for you know, help with trauma, and a lot of our training right now is going towards trauma informed,
Mhm.
because we
Yeah.
want our educators to not just carry on with students as if there may not be anything going on with them, but to really approach students from understanding what that trauma may be, because some people are not familiar with, you know, certain things that may have happened, or that background, or what that entails. So what types of advice, or do you have any trainings that you offer for educators in that lens?
Yeah, so I think with educators, there are so many, you know, different pieces to this.
Mhm.
You know, there is that trauma informed lens and approaching, you know, students from that perspective and other educators from that perspective as well, right?
Mhm.
Because we also have to look at leadership. So leadership also has to develop that emotional intelligent piece to be able to relate to their staff, but also understanding and approaching the staff, or the educators themselves, right, from a trauma informed lens. So it backs up. It's not just the educators, right? We kind of have to back it up a little bit and look at the leadership as well.
Mhm.
But the other piece that I also deal with in my work is, you know, that burnout piece. And
Mhm.
Bijane mentioned it when she was introducing me, but what we're finding is that people just in general are burnt out, right? Just in general. It's
Mhm.
a
I
lot
agree.
going
Mhm.
on. And what we initially said was, you know, hey, okay, yeah, COVID happened and we're gonna like just, you know, okay, it's over now. Just resume this level of normalcy. Okay,
Mhm.
hold on. So, you know, let's really look at this. For if you had never experienced any type of trauma in your life, right? You did when COVID hit, because
Mhm.
all of us was impacted by loss, separation, isolation.
Mhm.
Our lives changed, right? I mean, and it came really, really fast. And it was like, okay, adjust, right? And like you said, you're all right, figure it out. It's okay, you're
Mhm.
okay, you know. And so like then it was like, well, COVID's over. So now just go back to being normal. Come
In
back
which
into the
COVID is
school
not
system.
over, but that's
Right,
a whole other
exactly.
story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother
Right.
thing, right? Come back into the school system, start dealing with these kids, it doesn't matter if they get COVID and they bring it to school. You're fine, deal with it. So there's so many, different parts to this. And in the work that I do, I try to approach, everything from the angle of us making sure that we are honoring ourselves and that we're honoring the people, around us. So we have to honor, I think, each other and making sure that we're taking care of each other. I was looking for her. I was like, where'd she go? And so, but I stayed in character. You saw that, right? So, but the biggest piece I think is being able to come in and really look at what are the specific needs of the population. So what is it exactly that educators need? And not just saying, something that really annoys me is when people say, let's just give them EAP programs. Let's just give them, perks. Let's just give them benefits. Oh, they have access to counseling, right? But what if their specific needs, right? Because especially as a brown person, my specific needs as a brown person is not going to be the same as someone that's not brown. Okay. My specific needs as someone who's a mom is not going to be the same as someone who's not a mom. So now if we're really getting into taking care of people, we have to get down to what is it that person needs and customize those offerings. And so that's where I come in. That's my job. That is what, I come in to do that. My doctorate specifically focuses on integrated care. And on the healthcare side, and then my history just as a therapist of about 20 something years, I've realized that individualization piece when it comes to caring for people is super important. And we forget that.
Yeah.
So I definitely do programming for educators. I definitely come in and speak to educators. But my biggest thing with educators, because I love them so much, along with nurses, they're like some of my favorite people, because I feel like without really, like, you go to a doctor who really does all the work, right? So without nurses and without educators, really, honestly, like a lot of us would be lost. So we have to really, really take care of those people. So yes, that's in a nutshell. That's
I love that. The whole mentioning about one size does not fit all, customizing, and I'm sure that there are tons of grants, especially with being able to hit on mental health supports for teachers, because I think we have to be in tune with yourself and what trauma that you hold.
Definitely.
If you also want to help and support children, right, or as a leader support staff, there are tons of wellness grants out there, social emotional learning grants, and ultimately what you're doing is a service to help make sure that teachers are well, like you said, nurses are well, people are well, and hopefully the outcome would be maybe retention if that's added plus or benefit. So there are tons of grants out there that could help pull you in more into the school system that you should consider. You could consider, because definitely your work, you and Mr. Simpkins' work, is definitely much needed out in the community. And I'm glad you all were able to join us tonight on our show tonight. So thank you. We're going to post
for having us.
Yeah, we're going to post where people can find you, because I'm sure they want to know you and Dr. and Mr. Simpkins in the chat box. And then also where they can find us at Dr. Shika Houston at Create and Educate. And then also me at BK consultancy.org. Dr. Shika, are we missing anything? Like, this was a good show. It's like we need to have a part 2 or something.
Well, we will have a part 2. So you all hang out with us for a moment. We're going to end this show, and we have 2 more guests joining us in about 3 minutes. So stay tuned when we come back live. But thank you all for joining us. Those of you that tuned in, and thank you, our guests. And you all both have that counseling background or clinical background. So that's a good connection as well. But thank you all so much. Everyone have a great evening and stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.